Welcome to the first annual Baker's Award Ceremony. I'm your host, Michael Swartz, joined by my co-host, Owen Harsch. And our fellow co-hosts, Hayley Essin and Kaitlyn Schmitt. We have a great evening planned for you tonight, celebrating the top 10
most impactful
events
of the 20th century.
Starting us right off is Hayley Essin with number 10.
All right, coming in at number 10 is the first flight of the Wright brothers. The first successful powered aircraft flight took off on December 17th, 1903, developed by not only, but the Wright brothers. Now this flight only lasted 12 seconds and traveled under 200 feet, but it changed American history forever. Before the invention, Americans had no developments regarding the rules of aerodynamics, but this flight not only provided Americans with a new way of transportation, but also allowed for discovery of new lands from an overhead view. Now, on to Michael for number 9.
Thank you. Thank you, Hayley. The Great Migration, coming in at number 8. One of the largest movements of American people in United States history, caused by economic and social terror like the Jim Crow laws of the South. 6 million African Americans moved from the South to the North, Midwest, and Western states from the beginning of the 20th century to the 1970s. The migration marked the beginning of increased political activism among Black people that found new positions in the North and West that were previously denied to them in the South. Also led to civil rights movements in the 50s and 60s, and after migrating, African Americans confronted racial, political, social, and economic injustices that would influence the future to come. And now on to number 8, Kaitlyn Schmitt.
Thank you, Michael. Now, coming in at number 8 is the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis was when the Soviet Union put missiles into Cuba, looking right at the United States. In return, the United States put missiles into Turkey, leading to a 4-day standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. This was the closest the world has ever been to a nuclear war. As both of the world's superpowers became increasingly closer to a nuclear war, it made them both reconsider the nuclear arms race and take steps into a nuclear test ban treaty. The Cuban Missile Crisis resulted into a telecommunication hotline being set up between the two countries so they could communicate during any times of crisis. And now, coming in at number 7 is Hayley Essin.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Coming in at number 7, we have the Red Scare. The Red Scare was the name given to the intense, widespread fear of the rise of communism during the 1900s. This threat of domination caused Americans to participate in many wars, resulting in millions of deaths. They also developed a philosophy called McCarthyism, which was the process of interrogating and punishing potential communists. The Red Scare not only caused sectionalism, but also a widespread distrust in the government.
You're a communist.
No, I am not.
Yes, you are.
Welcoming to the stage, Owen Harsch, presenting number 6.
Thank you, Hayley. Coming in at number 6 is the passage of the 19th Amendment. This amendment gave women the right to vote for the first time in U.S. history after a long and hard-fought battle won by the women's rights movement. After this amendment passed in 1919, 8 million women voted in the 1920 election, but its impact didn't stop there. It inspired the fight for gender equality for generations after, leading to many important strides towards equal rights for all. Now presenting number 5, Michael Swartz. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Owen. Coming in at number 5 on our list of the top 10 most impactful events of the 20th century is the man landing on the moon. On July 16, 1969, astronauts Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin, and Neil Armstrong made the treacherous journey to the moon on a Saturn V rocket from the Kennedy Space Center. In the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and in the midst of the Cold War. After they landed on the moon, we learned more about the composition of the floating rock, led to see Earth from the perspective of space, and led to technologies like weather and communication satellites, smoke detectors, and even sunglasses. And it also led to further moon missions and brought the nation together with a sense of enormous national pride.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Coming onto the stage to present number 4 is Owen Harsch.
Thank you, Michael. The fourth most impactful event of the 20th century is the invention of the internet. The internet was a result of the Cold War, when the US was trying to surpass the USSR in technological advancements. It has led to a more connected world and a greater capability of further advancements. Its effects has led the nation to go from this to this. No other invention has had such a widespread impact on everyday life as the invention of the internet has had on modern society. Come to the stage now to present number 3, Kaitlyn Schmitt.
Thank you, Owen. Now, coming in at number 3 is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This act prohibited discrimination of sex and race in hiring, promoting, and firing, as discrimination in public places and federally funded programs were prohibited. The Civil Rights Act ended the application of Jim Crow laws, which was the separate but equal laws implemented by the Plessy v. Ferguson court case. The Civil Rights Act paved the way for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibited discriminatory voting practices like literacy tests, and the Fair Housing Act, prohibiting discrimination in rental and financing of property. This act created a great foundation for the struggle against racism that continues today. Now, for number 2, Hayley Essin.
Alrighty, coming in for number 2, the second most impactful event is the attack on Pearl Harbor, which happened on December 7th, 1941. This surprise military attack was planned by the Japanese Navy against the United States in Honolulu, Hawaii, with hopes to absolutely demolish the Pacific Fleet. However, this ambush was ultimately unsuccessful due to the bombs missing the oil tanks and repair facilities and only damaging American ships and planes. However, it did injure and kill many Americans, which ultimately led the United States' entry into the World War II. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for. The top, most impactful event of the 20th century, presented by Kaitlyn Schmitt.
Thank you, Hayley. And the number 1 event will be the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a period between 1929 to 1933 where the economy experienced the greatest and longest economic recession in the world, with huge spikes in unemployment. During the Great Depression, the people of the country were widely affected as they experienced a huge rate of unemployment, the closure of banks, and an overall massive recession. The people were as well forced to relocate and find new ways to support themselves, as almost all businesses had to come to a closure. The Great Depression continued for multiple years, but came to an end at the start of World War II when the demand for jobs increased and the New Deal policies were in place, creating temporary jobs for the people. Now that concludes our list of the top most impactful events of the 20th century. Can I please invite my co-hosts back on the stage?
Thank you, Kaitlyn. It has been our honor to present the top 10 most impactful events of the 20th century to you, and I hope you all have a great night. Good night, everybody.
Good night!
Thank you for coming out.
Yay.